Hi, everyone. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining the Empowered Career Woman podcast. I'm back and I am here with one of my very, very good friends. And I am so excited about today, you guys. Uh, you know, First and foremost, this is a new year, 2025, and this is all about becoming better, become empowered. And I'm just so excited what this year is going to bring for us, especially now as we're going to kick this year off with one of my very good friends, AnDrea Roberts. Miss Roberts, her and I have known each other. Oh my gosh. I feel like it's been over 20 years, but
It
let's not
has.
go there. It probably has been, but this woman inspired me from the very, very beginning when I first met her, I have to say. We started out in higher education together, and the two of us actually became directors at a very young age. And I have to say, becoming a new director at in the late 20s, for me, I was 29. I was like, what am I doing? And I just love that she has built her business. She has trained and developed and coached so many other leaders in her lifetime. And I'm just so honored to have her be a part of this Empowered Career Woman podcast because she is that empowered career woman. And so I just want to welcome you, Drea.
Thank
What's up?
you. I'm so happy to be here today. I've been looking forward to it.
For sure. Well, first and foremost, before we start anything, would you please introduce yourself to all of the listeners out there? Tell us a little bit
Abs-
about who you are, what you do, and let's kind of get going.
So I am AnDrea Roberts. I am many things to many people, actually. By day, I am a consultant in leadership development, and I have been doing that for nearly 20 years. And I absolutely am blessed to say that I get to do for a living what I do for free. I believe my greatest job comes from my greatest teacher, my 4-year-old son, Hamilton George Roberts. So, being his mom has not only changed my life, but it has taught me things and made me reach into myself in ways that I never even imagined, places that I didn't know that existed for me. Um, I am an avid traveler. I am an adrenaline junkie. I'm a little bit nuts. I like to jump out of things and jump off of things. But I do believe with all of that, my purpose and my calling in this life is to be an educator. And so, like Cathy mentioned, I have been in a leadership role since very young. I was actually 25 at the time that I became a director, and made a lot of mistakes, but never doubted the ability to do that because I believe I'm called to lead and I believe I'm called to be an educator. And so my life has just taken a lot of twists and turns that have gotten me where I am today, which led to the business that Cathy referred to, which is my consulting business, Capital D Consulting. My mother is so creative that she named me AnDrea with a capital D in the middle. And so that's that capital D. But the entire purpose of the business is dedicated to my friends who I talk to all the time, who are leaders in large organizations or entrepreneurs, and they just need thought partnership. And so they call and they say, you know, what do you think about this? Or I'm going through this with one of my employees, or oh, in my business, I've been thinking about this. This is what you do. And I realize so many people just don't even have that person who does this as a profession and need that boost, need that thought partnership, need that strategy to bounce it off of that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. It shouldn't be expensive to
Yeah.
have a thought partner. So why not make it a business and help people in 30-minute increments versus 2 hours? And instead of charging $1,000, make it so affordable that they can have a couple conversations if necessary. So that's who I am in a nutshell. That's the business. And I'm so thankful, Cathy, that you have me here.
Well, first, like I said, first off, when you were talking about Hamilton, becoming a mother will change a woman's life. And I know I have listeners out there who do not have any, which is okay. And it's a choice that they don't have any. But I have to say, just going through the trials and tribulation of being a mother, oh my gosh. I mean, recently, my daughter just went back to college. Really, she doesn't have to go back to college until after Martin Luther King Day. And she has an apartment. She has her two roomies. They're all about this independent life right now. And on one side, I'm so sad, but on the other side, I'm so proud and excited for her and her life. Because I remember when I was 19 and 20 years old, and I wanted to conquer the world and I wanted to have my own independence. And so for her to want that and to strive for that now, I let it go. I mean, it is so hard. It's probably one of the hardest things that no one has ever told me. But my gosh, I'm so proud of her
Let me
and
tell
the
you
things that she's
something.
doing.
Hammy's 4, and I'm already about to be in shambles because he'll be in kindergarten
Kindergarten.
at the end of the year. But something that, so I am co-founder and former chair of an employee resource group at my organization for moms. And we host a conference annually. And one of our leaders, who since retired, shared something that just helped me so much because I try not to be a helicopter mom, but I just, it comes in sometimes. And she said the whole point of being a mother is that your children can go on and live in this life without you holding their hand. And so that Paula is able to fly, you
Mm,
did your job. That's the whole point. And the life that she lives because you taught her how to fly will be directly evident of and impacted by the job that you and her dad did. So
yeah.
that's awesome that she's
Thank you.
flying.
Thank you. She is flying. And I know that my husband is like, honey, she's doing her thing. I mean, and uh, yes, she is. And that's the reason why I don't want to like hinder her
Stifle
from,
her.
yes, stifle
Mhm.
her because I want her to shine. I want her to go way more than where I ever been.
Honey,
And
she
she
has
knows
good
that.
genes. She has good genes. She's gonna be okay.
She's gonna be all
She's
right.
gonna be okay.
But I love your story about consulting and how you have helped other people with being that thought partner. That's so inspiring because there's so many women out there, or even people out there that just need guidance. I remember when I first became a director, and at that time, the boss that I had really wasn't a good teacher. And there's unbeknownst to him, I think he didn't get taught how
Mhm.
to lead either. And so I don't have any fault to him, but I know that a lot of people didn't really enjoy the way that he managed the teams. But once I had a new leader come in and he taught me how to lead by being a servant leader. And I mean, there were so many different things that I learned, and I've mentioned Aaron before, but I learned so much from my mentor, Aaron. And to this day, there are things that I do still today as a leader from the things that he taught me 15, 18 years ago, which I feel super, super grateful for. But there are a lot of people out there that do not get that kind of guidance. And I love that you are that consultant for your company and your organization, but you're that consultant for other people who want to move up, who want to become better, but they don't know how to do that. And so, kind of talk to us about like what made you think that through what was that inspiration? I know you kind of struggled yourself as a leader when you first started 25 years old to be a director. That's I don't even know. I mean, I remember having people on my team that were older than me, and they looked at me like,
Mhm.
"Who's this little baby
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
manage me and all of this?" And
Mhm.
I had to not come off as being so powerful, but yet I needed to say that these are the things that we needed to do. What inspired you to build this business?
Ooh, so many things that you just mentioned, actually. So, part of it, I tell people today that for me, leadership is one of those experiences that if you've never been a people leader, it's very difficult to understand. And so, you have um, people who are informal leaders and people trust them on the team, and those are usually the loudest voices saying, well, the manager should do this and the director should do that. And literally, unless you've sat in that seat, it is so difficult to truly understand that. For me, leadership felt like a formal leadership role with 20 people on staff. One of my employees was 80 years old. um, it felt like the first day of undergrad. It felt like going to college for the first day. And, the night before, my family had celebrated. It's kind of like you get the promotion, you're excited, everybody's so happy for you.
Oh, yeah.
And then everyone waves goodbye. They're so proud. And then you're sitting there by yourself, like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
That for me is what formal leadership feels like, usually for the first time. But many people feel like this in perpetuity because there is no mentor, there is no formal leadership team to help prepare you, and you're just figuring it out trial by error.
Mhm.
And the leader that you spoke about before, Aaron, I remember him as well,
Yeah.
very well could have just been doing the best that he knew how. I believe, genuinely in my heart, I believe most of us are just doing the best that we can. And we
Yeah.
just do what we can with what we have. We were taught this way, we were led this way. So that's just what we do.
Mhm.
And at 25, I didn't suffer from imposter syndrome. I didn't believe I shouldn't be in that job, but I did suffer from a lot of insecurity. I had a fellow coworker, peer of ours, who kind of pulled me to the corner and reminded me that I was her son's age. Um, Love that conversation.
I love that.
And, you know, and I felt just in general, I had something to prove. I
Mhm.
was always the youngest person in the room. I was probably the least educated. I think everyone at that point like had a master's degree. And I just, I never felt um, secure in
Yeah.
my position.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I did was trial by error because no one taught me. And because I was so young, proud, and just stubborn, there was a lot that I wasn't wise enough to take in. And
Yeah.
so I fumbled the ball daily. However, I was fortunate and blessed enough to have connection. The one thing that I was able to do is build relationships. So I made a lot of errors, but I was blessed enough to have great relationships. So that 80-year-old team member of mine was constantly speaking with me about things I should watch out for, maybe areas I should slow down. I was wise enough to listen to him. Sometimes I didn't and made the mistakes. I had people who were younger than me on my team, some were the same age. I would listen to them about things that they liked and didn't like. I actually almost lost my associate director. A lot of people didn't know that. I loved her, but she felt that I was doing everything and
Mm.
she didn't have room to grow. And I didn't know that that's what leaders were supposed to do. I thought you're supposed to take care of everything. And so I learned a lot trial by fire.
Mm.
And I promised myself if I gotten the opportunity to teach other people to prevent them from making the mistakes that I made, I would take that opportunity without blinking
Love
because
it.
it is hard enough being a human, then being all the other roles that you are. So at the time, I wasn't a mother, I wasn't a wife, I wasn't any of those titles that I've held in my life. But I was a friend, I was a daughter, I was a granddaughter, I had obligations to organizations, my sorority, my church. It's hard enough being human and then
Yeah.
being in charge of humans that you didn't give birth to. Like, they
That's
don't have to listen to me.
that's right.
And so I just wanted to make sure that no one else felt like they'd been dropped off on the first day of school and just left to figure it out. because there is a system, there's a method, there's a process. Like, this isn't stuff that you have to figure out. There are strategies, there are frameworks, there's so many things that we can do that had I been equipped with them at 25, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have made so many mistakes. I'm thankful for those mistakes. They make the best stories that I tell in my consulting sessions now.
Yeah.
Some of them are really funny, but
Not
it,
funny at the time.
it was not funny at the time. It was humbling, but it
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
funny.
not funny.
It wasn't funny. But I also I want to say too, I'm in a position now that I'm proud to say 20 years later, right? I think
Yeah.
it's awesome that we can come and say, not everyone made it 20 years later. So we can say 20 years later, we are still leading, right?
Oh yeah.
I will say that I am appreciative of the journey because it makes me much more humble, but also it allows me the opportunity to grant others more grace.
Oh.
When you've made as many mistakes as I've made, and I think something happened to me at 42, I think now I'll be 45 this year, where I stopped trying to be perfect and I started embracing the flaws. And I started doing something I've never done in my life, which is granting myself grace. I
Mm.
think when you become enlightened in a certain way and people give you information that also shares the mistakes that they've made. So that's also my angle. There is not a consulting session I have where I don't tell people about the mistakes that I made. I do that because there's something freeing and liberating about knowing that you're not the only one. You're
That
not in this by yourself. There's nothing new under the sun. This mistake has been made before and people survived it. It's so important to have someone real enough to
mm.
tell you that. Like, don't be confused by any titles that you see behind my name. Ignore the doctor this, ignore the this and that. Like, mistakes have been made here. And those mistakes have not only taught me, but they've given me space in my heart to grant not you grace, but also grant me grace. I grant myself grace. And once I'm able to do that and help someone else understand that, there's just a freeing thing that takes place. There's a dynamic, a shift that takes place with that.
That is so good. That is so good. Oh my goodness. Where were you when I was first starting out?
Struggling myself. We
You
were
know what I
together.
mean? I think the other thing that's so powerful about you and this whole journey that you've been on is the fact that you are a strong woman. And that this is what this is all about. I mean, of course, I'm here to help and train and develop and lead men, but the group of people, the pocket of folks that I am helping today, especially with this Empowered Career Woman podcast, is women, because oftentimes we feel like we have to do extra. Well, sorry, not we have feel we have to do extra to be seen in a corporate environment, or to be even seen. Like, I just remembered when I moved to one of the other locations in my previous company, and I would get there around 7:30 in the morning, and I would already have reports done. I'm already, I'm taking care of my people. And then a colleague comes walking in at 10:30
Mm-hmm.
and, after playing golf,
Mm-hmm.
and then leaves at 3:30. And here I am until like 7 o'clock. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking to myself, how is it that I need to be here this long to prove my capabilities as a leader for somebody to see that my worth? So I get it with what you're saying. It's not imposter syndrome. It's like I'm a Filipina. I'm a young woman, young, and I'm a woman, and I need to prove that I am just as capable as anybody around that table. And that, I think, is something that people don't talk about. And I love that you are that person for all of these women who are listening to this podcast right now. So thank you for inspiring, but go ahead.
Want to tell you that I am so glad you brought that up because we don't talk about that enough.
Yep.
And so, two things with that. There's a difference between paying your dues and proving
Mm,
yourself. So I want to free some people up right now. When I was 25, when you were 29, we were paying our dues. And
yes.
we did have to be there earlier. And we did. And I was a 25-year-old Black girl for all intents and purposes, right? What people
Yeah.
were calling me,
Yep.
trying to prove who were the same age as the students, basically, that we had there,
Oh gosh, yeah.
trying to prove that I was responsible enough and worthy enough, really, for the role, right?
Hmm.
Um, but what I was doing and what you were doing is paying our dues. I believe that's important.
100%.
But at 45
Uh-uh.
and at 49, you don't have to come in at 7:30 and stay
No.
until 7 o'clock.
Nope.
And I will tell people, I think one of the biggest disservices that we give to ourselves is putting ourselves in the box that we assume other people are putting us in. No one cornered me and said, little Black girl, you don't belong here. I assumed that that's what people were thinking, and I put that pressure on myself. Did I need to pay my dues? I did, but I really boxed myself into the assumption of what other
Mm.
people thought of me. The moment that I open my mouth, it is impossible for you to believe that I am uneducated, inexperienced, and don't belong. And that is with intention. I make sure that when I speak, you understand that I belong. I'll pay my dues. But at this big age, I'm not proving myself to anyone. And I've met so many people of color, women of color, who still hold on to that shield of armor that we have to prove you do not. Literally, by virtue of the seat that you're sitting, that's enough to say that you're supposed to be there. So
Yeah.
it's about you being true to yourself. If you find yourself doing things, subscribing to things, participating in things that aren't necessary. You're just doing them because you feel that you should so that other people can understand your work. You're really hindering yourself because you don't have to do that. That man is confident enough to walk in with that golf bag because he knows he belongs. And so, because he carries that confidence, he gets to do that. My mother always says the best way, my mother is a law abiding citizen, by the way, but she always says the best way to commit a crime is to do it out in front of everyone, right? Because you don't look suspicious. And so it's the same when you're a leader as a woman, there's no need to apologize. There's no need to prove. There's no need to overcompensate. Sometimes we have those hangups and we project them, and it shows up on our teams. Let me do a survey right now of how your team feels about you. That overcompensation, that stuff you're doing in your head, that overthinking, it's spilling out to them too.
Oh
You
yeah.
are exactly where you're supposed to be because you've earned it, because you're supposed to be there, because you have the credentials, because you have the expertise, because you have the relationships. Free yourself of having to prove. You had to prove at the interview, you got it. You have this business because you're equipped to have it. Free yourself of having to prove. You don't. You have the wherewithal. That's why you've got the business and the clientele to prove it. You can let that go. You can take that off your shoulders because the only person really at this point that you're doing that for is yourself.
Oh
So
yeah.
if it's something you want to do and subscribe to, by all means, but don't feel the need to prove. Pay your dues.
Hmm.
Once dues are paid, free yourself of that burden.
Oh my gosh, I love that so, so much because it's really funny. I had somebody say something to me recently, and oh gosh, I remember now where had kept on bringing up all these past hurts,
Hmm.
you know, and in this coaching call, I said, hold on, stop. You can let that go. I am telling you right now, you can let that go. And it was almost as if she needed to hear
Yes.
me or somebody give her the assurance to let that go. And I just love that you did that for some of our listeners out there, because we hold on so tight on whatever this thing is. And I love that you are allowing them to say, you know what? I am freeing myself from this. I don't need this. I don't need that burden.
Mhm.
Now, I 100 wholeheartedly agree. You pay your dues.
Pay your dues.
That's how you gain respect from
That's
the
right.
people. That's how you, one, you learn about yourself too when you're paying your own dues. Like, what is your capabilities? How can
Mhm.
you push yourself even? And I love that part of that learning for myself. I mean, it's this constant learning, right? I mean, and even where I'm at today, girl, I'm going to be 40, I'm going to be 50 this year.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And looking 25.
Oh, I love you. But,
Mhm.
coming to this age, like you said, when you were in your early 40s, you realize I'm going to release all of that pressure that we put on ourselves. And I don't need that. I don't need that anymore. I don't need to deal with any of that mess.
My
I
resume speaks for itself.
I don't. I know. And I hope this message does resonate with other people who are listening, because it is so, so critical and so, so crucial. I love it. Um, you know, Oftentimes when I talk to new leaders, or, folks who are wanting to, or they've been thinking about building up their own business, or they're thinking about, I want to grow in my organization. Oftentimes they have a problem with communication. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that new leaders face sometimes. And so, you know, I know, have helped so many people. Can you talk about communications, the importance of it, and can maybe give a tip on communication?
Absolutely. I actually have two tips. Um, One is communication is both an art and a science. And so my undergrad degree is in communications. And one of the first things that we learned was that it's actually a process. Communication begins when a sender sends a message to the receiver, but the loop is not closed without feedback. Feedback is actually what closes the loop to effective communication. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of distractions, tone of voice, and all that stuff that can prevent this from happening. But it is ultimately feedback that determines whether or not the communication was effective. Two things to that. One, that means the other person has to somehow indicate that they've received the message in order for the communication to be effective. And the only way that happens is if we're listening. Most of the time in communication, people are literally talking about speaking. They're not talking about communicating, they're talking about speaking. Speaking is one of the smallest parts. The sender is just the beginning. There's the message, the what you said, the receiver, how they got it, the feedback, the evidence that they received it. There's more impotence on the listening piece than
Mm,
it is the speaking. There's an old adage, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. These old sayings exist for a reason. My biggest tip when it comes to communication and doing so effectively is listen first.
mm,
We speak first. And that's why most communication is ineffective. If I ask you what you heard and you're unable to respond in a way that demonstrates that you fully understood, it was ineffective.
mhm.
So often we don't even just cut people off, right? So, I'm a Leo, the oldest, move fast, talk fast, think fast. It's easy for me to cut people off. I come up with ideas really fast. And that's the only way that most people really consider cutting someone off. Meanwhile, you can sit quietly, your mouth can be zipped shut, and in your mind, you've cut me off. You're already thinking about the next question, or you're thinking, that's not true. Wait until she stops talking so I can tell her. And so, literally, you have no idea what I'm saying past that point where you said, that's not even what it is.
That's
And
right.
now I'm just Charlie Brown's teacher. Blah, blah, blah. That's all you hear
Yeah.
until I do this. And now you go in. The most important part of communication is the listening. Listen and seek. I know that Stephen Covey says seek to understand and not to respond. But I say seek to be heard and not to be right. So often we're just seeking to make a point, and we're just seeking so that you know what I meant by that and all the things. But if your true purpose is to be heard, when it's your time to speak, you will do so different. So first, listen openly, even in your mind, but then seek to be heard and not to be right. It will change the way that you speak.
Are so good. I love it. Well, you've heard that old adage at work, like 80% listening, 20% speaking. You hear that often all the time, but I love how you put this into perspective, seek to be heard and not to be right. That is so, so good. Oh my gosh, Drea, that is so great. Thank you. Love
Oh, listen, trial by fire over here. Learning by living.
Well, listen, this is going to continue, you guys. We are going to Next week, we're going to continue on with our conversation with AnDrea Roberts about all of this goodness that we are talking about. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining us on this Empowered Career Woman podcast. Listen, I believe in you. I empower you. Go out and do exciting, amazing things in your life, and don't hold yourself back. I love it. We will see you guys back next week. Girl, you killed it.
Oh,
You
I'm
killed
sitting here like, oh, am I talking
it.
too much,
I have to
Cathy?
stop recording. Wait, it's